All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Go With The Flow. I'm your host, Folarin Okulaja, here with another very, very, very special guest. I don't pull out the three varies a lot, but I'm pulling it out for you. But before we get to my guests, stop what you're doing, like, subscribe, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. Now, to my guest, for people who don't know who is sitting to my right now, he is a multi-talented, multi-hyphenated is what that's the term they're using now.
Yeah.
Photographer, artist who has worked with the likes of Wizkid, Burna Boy, Megan Good, Chris Tucker, Jaylen Brown. I could keep going. He's done campaigns for companies like Kith, Nike, NASDAQ, Macy's, Billboard, to name a few, and his work has been featured in Forbes, Essence, Teen Vogue, again, amongst a few. But welcome to the show, Tayo.
Thank you for having me, bro. It's an honor and a pleasure.
And
to make this happen.
I know I DM'd you, but because we met. I mean, I've known of you, but we met for the first time in Nigeria in December. And again, I've been familiar with their work, been a big fan. And so I remember we were at a party and I was like, I need you on my podcast. DM'd you when I got back to New York. You were very gracious. You said you would come on. And then I saw you in the city and I hit you up and now here we are. This was 3 days ago I DM'd you.
Hey, man. It's a pleasure to finally make it happen. I'm glad and I'm honored, Never think I really have that much perspective to share, so.
You said you don't have that much perspective to share?
I said I never really think I have that much perspective to share.
He's such a humble guy. When we get to all the questions and when this is all said and done, we'll have the audience be the one to tell us if you have a perspective to share. But I want to start with, I really just want to chronicle your career, but even starting with college. So you went to Drexel, you graduated with a degree in civil engineering.
Correct.
Take me back to 2016. At that point in time, what did you think your 5-year plan would be?
Man, actually, I remember within the first month of my first job out of college, I knew immediately I could not do this for the rest of my life. I just knew that I couldn't be behind a desk, couldn't be doing something that I wasn't feeling inspired or motivated by. And that didn't mean that I wasn't going to be in a corporate space or corporate setting. I just knew that engineering, at least, was not going to be the medium of me sustaining myself for the longevity of my life and my career. So 5-year plan, even though I didn't know the steps to make it happen, was definitely at that point to find my passion, first and foremost, find something I was passionate about. And whatever that was, to be doing that at the end of the 5 years, and to not necessarily be, self-sustained by that point, but to have at least made those inroads and those strides to make sure that I'm really on the path to excellence in whatever it is that I decided to do. Obviously, being from, our background, whatever it is, doesn't matter whether it's corporate or creative, the goal needs to be excellence. It needs to be thriving in that space, not just surviving. So for me, that was a 5-year plan. I distinctly remember the moment when I was like, you know what, like within 5 years, I got to be out of here. And it's crazy to think that 5 years from 2016 was when I made that move to Los Angeles. So I didn't fully leave at that point, but I was right on the cusp of it.
And that's fascinating because I wasn't even expecting you to say that. I was expecting you to say the way most people do, where it's, I have this great degree from this great school, again, engineering degree. I'm going to be, high up at some corporate company in 5 years. So I love the fact that you pretty quickly realized corporate wasn't for you and you were going to pursue that passion. Mm-hmm. And so talk to me about the steps you took to actually go ahead and find what that passion was.
That's a good question. I don't know if I really took any steps. I think it kind of found me. At that point, photography was something I was already heavily interested in. I don't think I would say it was a passion at that point. I think it was something that I was starting to realize was it just stuck around, because I feel like throughout my life I've had different phases where I've had different moments of being really locked in on something, whether it was sports with soccer, whether it was, Greek life in college and, trying to, be the best within the org and very helpful within the org, or even as a brother, just being locked in as a role model. But photography was one of those things that kind of just made me wanna just made me curious. Really, was what it was. It made me very curious. Like, okay, how far can I take this? How far can I push it? And I think once I started just increasing my input into that craft and into the art, that's when that passion started to really bubble up. And as that passion started to bubble up, obviously the energy and the input started to increase as well. And it was just kind of like a symbiotic relationship where the more I invested in it, the more passionate I became. The more passionate I became, the more invested I became in it. So after 2 years of that, I was like, okay, this is something that, one, I'm starting to get good at. I'm starting to get some traction within this space, and two, I didn't really see it as at that point. I really didn't see it in a way to really monetize and create sustainability. I think a lot of it was also fear, but yeah, just the passion really just found me, honestly, and I think that's the beauty of it. I think in anything in life, you never really want to chase. You just kind of want to attract, or just kind of want to let things happen as they will. That's when things are the most beautiful, most powerful, and have the most longevity from what I've seen. So, yeah.
He started this out by saying he doesn't have a lot of wisdom to share. You just dropped so many gems in that part right there. And I want to touch on a few things. The first thing, I love what you said about the more inputs and investing in yourself, because this is subtle plug, not even subtle, this brand that I mentioned I was starting is called Reps Capital.
And I was about to ask about that. I was like, damn, that looks fire.
Thank you. On sale in 2 months.
It's giving like rugby Ralph Lauren.
Yes, sir. And the whole ethos behind the brand is putting in the work to become good at whatever you want to do. And that's exactly what you did with your photography. So I love that you use that language. That's the same one my co-founder and I are using to actually push the brand. Another thing that you mentioned is the initial fear. And we're going to delve into that, because I think as creatives, ever since I've started doing this podcast, I've gotten such a huge appreciation for anyone who puts any type of content out there. Anyone who doesn't do it, for them, it just seems so easy, and like there's no thought that goes behind it. But there's so much vulnerability to putting out any type of content, and a lot of fear that goes into, okay, is this going to be judged? How is it going to be received? And so we're going to double click on kind of a little bit more of that. And then just the last thing you said about don't chase, attract. I think that's such a beautiful message that can apply to so many things, whether it's romantic relationships, whether it's your passions, whether it's your career. If you trust like there's a broader plan for you, you're not going to go out of your way to try to force things to happen when you just, again, have that faith that things are going to work out the way that they're supposed to. So I love all of that.
I mean, obviously it's a lot easier said than done, but there's just lessons along the way, honestly.
Yeah, and one of my favorite quotes and one of my favorite speeches is Steve Jobs' Stanford commencement speech from, I think, 2007. And he has like these 3 principles. And the first one is you can only connect the dots looking backwards. You can't connect them looking forward. So again, just have faith that things are going to work. I'm going to send you the speech. It's a phenomenal. I listen to it like once a week. It's an amazing speech. So even going back to you even picking up a camera for the first time, you mentioned that you are always interested in photography. When you initially picked up the camera, what type of work were you trying to do? Were you just taking pictures of your friends? How were you initially using the camera?
When I first picked up the camera?
Yeah.
When I first picked up the camera, it was with the church fam. We were honestly just trying to get our fits off. If I can be completely frank. So those were my first subjects. Well, even before the actual camera, I think, my iPhone was the first real camera I had. And with that, it was more like, it was back in the time and area where Instagram was still very primitive and still very authentic and genuine. You were capturing the most mundane moments, a meal, sunset. And then that evolved into me being a little bit more calculated with how I was just seeing cityscapes in like Philly, or landscapes wherever I was traveling. So those were the earliest images I took, but then I definitely shifted my focus to people and portraiture, obviously starting with like friends at church. Then that moved into events on campus at school. That then transformed into being a bit more calculated and methodical. I worked with bloggers. That was also when, you know, the blogging era was big, and fashion bloggers needed content for their blogs. So that's where I started kind of getting that affinity for fashion, and it just kind of just snowballed after that. And yeah, that's just kind of how I kind of landed in this lane.
And so you're self-taught, which will mean you're going to need to put in, and again, this goes back to what you mentioned a little bit earlier. Put in the reps, exactly. You put in the reps. So that's something I want to even spend a little bit more time on, because if you're like in a class or you're in school, there's someone who's guiding you and who can kind of have that more structured path for you. But talk to me about the difficulty of not having that guidance and really just having to go out there, put the work in, and then iterate based on that.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely difficult, but I think I was blessed enough to be and grow up in an era where so much information is readily accessible. You know, YouTube University was key in all that learning, because any question I had, there was definitely a YouTube tutorial on it. And while it was difficult, I also found joy in that difficulty, you know, found something different and new to challenge myself in. And I think I'm just the type of person where I like to find things that are challenging and master them, whether that's personal growth, that was career, mental and physical well-being. I just like to find different challenges, and I think this was one of the first challenges that I really took on. And it got to a point where I was like, okay, now I'm like starting to really develop in this space. Like, okay, I'm really trying to be one of the best, not just a good photographer. I want to be a great photographer. I want to be, referenced. And I say that with as much humility as possible, but I mean, at the end of the day, like I said before, with the culture and the heritage I came from, got to the point that if I was going to do this, there's no mediocrity in that in that journey, in that strive. So it's the best or nothing. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of just the mentality that I had to adopt from early on.
And I love that mindset. I definitely think a lot of that comes from that Nigerian heritage, where if anything you're going to be or you're going to do, you need to be the best at. I approach every single thing the same way. Even with this podcast, I've done it for 4 years. It's still very much so growing. But I think to myself, there's no reason I can't be Joe Rogan. I say Joe Rogan because he's literally the biggest podcaster ever.
Amen.
This brand that me and my friend Mo are starting, I was literally just thinking to myself, why can't we be the next Essentials, the next Kith? Like, everybody starts from somewhere. If you're going to do something, you need to do it right. And if you don't have the intention to be the best at anything, why are you even doing it at all?
Facts.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like in any endeavor, in any industry, you have to have that mentality.
100%.
Why start? There's a million people out there doing and vying for the same spot that you want. And obviously, that's not to say there's a limited amount of spots. Obviously, the table is as big as you want to make it, but you can't make it to that level unless you have that drive and that dog in you.
100%. And kind of like I mentioned a little bit earlier, with something like photography, that is an art form that you are needing to put out there into the world. Yeah. And so I want to read part of a caption that you had from August 19th, 2019, that goes back to, I do my research. I do my research. And you said, I still remember when I created this page and started posting my photography. I vividly remember the insecurities I felt taking that step. I think the scariest part was the fact that I was sharing a side of me, which back then was a side I hadn't even explored, yet was opening up for others to consume, especially because I was so trash, LMAO. And it was a much longer caption, but I think that encapsulates what I even want to get at even more.
What post was that? Let me see.
I just took the screenshot. I didn't see. Yeah.
But what I was talking about.
But what I even want to get at there is just again, what I mentioned earlier, as a creative and someone who's making content, there's so much to it that people don't appreciate. And I went through this myself with the podcast where, and even there's still things that I want to get into, but even as confident as I am, there's still a little bit holding me back from even posting some other content I want to get into. And so I just am curious about your own personal journey with overcoming that fear and getting to the point where you were comfortable enough putting your work into the world.
I think that came from realizing that, okay, if you really want to be the person that you think you are and know you can be, you can't let this fear cripple you. And, I feel like I was so worried about what people would think, what people would say, what people would feel like, oh, you want to be a photographer now. It's like I feel like even we're still at that space, it's still that day and age where people want to box you in and so be this one-dimensional being when there's so much that I want to do, even outside of photography. And I feel like that was the first kind of evolution that I had to go through, in which I was like, okay, I need to be able to really break out of this shell that I'm constricting myself to. At the end of the day, what does it matter what Peter and Paul think about my work? As long as I care, as long as I love it. And that's still a point where I was still trying to really just figure out what I was trying to say with my work. I was doing a lot more fine art photography back then. So obviously it was definitely a lot more personal. It was a lot more it just showcased a lot of feelings and emotions that I had not really shared. And, it was new to me to convey those messages in that way. So obviously it made me a little anxious to be able to show the world that. But again, if I really wanted to continue to grow and continue to develop, I needed to get my work and my art out there. And it definitely came with a lot of resistance, mostly mental. And me starting to share more was me fighting against that and me kind of breaking past those insecurities, past those fears, because the only way you can do it sometimes is just by jumping right in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the thing. That's where that mindset of that caption was.
And even the whole idea that until you start doing it, you never know how big it can get.
Exactly.
I had Gloria George on here, who's now a massive content or makeup influencer, and she was just her message was like she knew she wanted to post, and she would just grind every day, working 2 jobs, come home and just start posting every night. She was going to post, and then in 3 years she is millions of followers because she initially decided to just start posting.
Listen.
And initially getting over that fear. If she would have never started posting, you don't know where it could go.
Like literally, and I was just thinking even yesterday, just the beauty of the journey as long as you just keep stepping and just keep moving in faith. Back then my big step was just making a post. Now obviously it looks a little differently, but it's still taking that stride. And God willing, 3 years from now, I'll be at a higher place.
Amen.
So yeah, man, it's all just about momentum.
And so who was either the first individual or company you worked with that made you feel like, okay, I think I might be doing something with this?
The first, okay, I mean, most recently, I think it's kind of full circle, working with Davido, back in 2019, I want to say it was like 2019-ish actually.
If it was made in America, it was 2018.
2018.
I did my research.
Shout out to you, bro. Shout out to you. Yeah, it's 2018. Yeah, I think that was one of my first big true call-ups, because it's one thing to like see someone and take a photo. It's another thing for someone to see your work and be like, I want you to take my photos. And that was the first moment in which I was really like chosen and co-signed for what for me at that point was a huge opportunity. And I don't even think I still had that calling. Like, yeah, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, or this is what I want to incorporate in my career path. But that was like, okay, whoa, if I can get recognized and selected by an artist of this caliber, then okay, we onto something here. Let's see how much further we can push it. So it was like another little challenge. Okay, you got this. Now what's next? How can you level up? So that was the first moment where I was like, okay, yeah, we moving.
I like that. And we're going to close that circle later because we're going to spend a few minutes on Davido later.
Okay.
But I'm curious in the fact that you said that even at that point, it wasn't your calling or you didn't feel like it was. At what point did you feel like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing with I don't know if it's my life, but just with this period of time right now?
That would have to be my first key art campaign. Which was
first what?
Key art campaign.
What's that mean?
Key art is, take for example, Sinners. Before the movie came out, you saw the posters of Michael B. with the Sinners branding, all the credits on it. That's like one example of key art.
Okay.
Any film, TV show, even concert posters. That's what the key art is. Basically, the key imagery that is used for marketing, promotional purposes across social media, across digital platforms. Or out of home on billboards. So that's what key art is. And my first key art. So needless to say, it's an industry or a type of commission that is very, very delicate because you're working with not only notable talent most of the time, but you're dealing with basically huge marketing budgets for shows or films. And it's a very niche space. So it's hard to get into that space without having prior work or experience or portfolio in that space. And when I got this call up for a bid, which was basically you have the opportunity to, basically I had an agent and she approached me with the bid for a key art campaign for a Showtime show that was coming out. And basically, it's me, a bunch of other artists that the network is going to look at, select from, and I'm like, okay, it's nice to be considered again, but there's no way that I'm going to beat out anyone for this, being that I don't have any key art work to show prior, and I didn't even have a passport at that time, or my passport was expired because it was at that point during COVID where there was a backlog. So if you were going to, renew your passport, it might take 7 to 9 months. And I just wanted to wait until I had a trip booked so I could get it expedited. So my passport was expired. I had this key art campaign that was coming up in London. So I was like, okay, what are the chances I wasn't even worried. Needless to say, 2 days after we had our introductory call and our meeting with the network, I found out that I was chosen. And then came the challenge of actually getting my passport expedited for the trip. Needless to say, it all worked out by his grace. And I think that was a moment where I was like, okay, the way things just aligned from getting the opportunity to being in DC at a time where I could easily go to the passport office and get that renewed. If I was anywhere else, it would have been much more difficult. Probably wouldn't have happened. I just don't believe in coincidences and the way everything, all the stars aligned for that. It just kind of was like, it was serendipitous, and it was definitely a bigger indication that there was something in this space that I was now definitely intrigued and interested in finding more about. So that's when I think my mind started shifting towards leaving corporate.
And perfect transition, because that's the next thing I wanted to ask about, is then taking that leap of faith to leave corporate. Because I don't care what anyone says, no matter how much success you might have been having, it's still a leap of faith. Corporate America, it is that, very well-traveled path where you might be making X amount. You were working at Deloitte. It's, again, what your parents can say, because I get the feeling. When I was at Goldman, my parents, again, you would think my first name was Goldman Sachs. The way my parents mentioned that first. So it's that thing that your parents can mention. So talk to me about what that leap of faith looked like and how your parents took it when you told them.
I mean, the leap of faith was a period of a bunch of smaller leaps. You know, it's almost like a triple jump. You know, I was running, took one little hop, another little hop before that final leap, and I think again it started from that moment in late 2020 where I got that opportunity, and I was like, okay, how do I set myself up for success in this big jump that I'm about to take? So obviously starting to ramp up my savings, obviously starting to build my network, and that came with a lot of travel to LA because I already just had this fixation and that was where I wanted to be. So started coming out to LA more, started building that network, would go out for periods at a time. At that point I was fully remote because most people were, so it gave me that bandwidth to be able to fly to LA, work from 6 till 3 p.m., still have relatively most of my day left to go out, network, do test shoots with models, stylists, and just build that portfolio. And little did I know, because even then I didn't know that I was going to move to LA, but I definitely benefited from it because when I did make that move, I already had kind of that network to tap in with. So that was another leap of faith. I took a leave of absence for a while just to be able to see what I would do with all that free time I would have. Because that was one of the biggest fears I had. It was just days where I did nothing. And that's sometimes part of the process. That's part of the journey. And then it got to the point where I was like, okay, yeah, I'm ready. You know, I think it was just a moment, it was a moment of realization where if I don't do this, it's never going to happen. I'm always going to be comfortable. I'm always going to feel almost subservient to that higher power of corporate, and I needed to break that chain. So, yeah, just had to take that leap. And when I did, to my surprise, my parents, they already had that faith as well. You know, I think they had seen the years of groundwork, they had seen the drive, they had seen the passion and intentionality behind everything, and there wasn't much fight back. It was more so, you've thought about this, you've prayed about it, you know, God got you. And I think that was the biggest cosign I could have ever had, you know, because I definitely was expecting a little drawback and resistance, but to just have them, it was almost like I was going for battle, you know?
Yeah, relatable.
I was like Jon Snow, Battle of the Bastards, you know, just drawing that sword, and I didn't need to. And I think that was like the biggest shock, but it's also just that moment of validation that I never knew I needed. I mean, you know, it's hard coming from our background and just the expectations and the mentality that, you know, I think helps us be so successful. Don't get me wrong, but at the same time, taking that ulterior path, it just felt great in that moment to just get that, you know.
Yeah, that's amazing, because I think exactly what you said, I can relate to the parental pressures of be a doctor or lawyer, engineer.
Yeah.
Oh, you're at this great finance firm, maybe you should stay there. And even funny enough, I have a friend who just did something similar where he had this great corporate job, but he's taken a huge bet on himself to go work on his startup full time. And he also mentioned how when he told his mom was like, yeah, like, I believe in you, go do it. And just that approval from, because it's such an interesting one where, because I've always tried to do things differently, like if I would have listened to my parents, I would be in med school right now. I would be, there's so much I would be doing. And so I've already known for a while that, like, I'm pretty much, not always, but a lot of the time going to do things that they disagree with. And so I've gotten comfortable with the fact that while they might not approve everything, that, like, I trust my path. And so while I'm not seeking their approval, when they do give it, it's like, okay, they're seeing that at least I know what I'm doing, and that will mean something. So while I'm not out there seeking their validation every step of the way, when they do give it, it's like, okay, now you're trusting the work that I've been putting in.
Exactly.
And so that's just special. And I think, yeah, that's a lesson for most parents, is because also another thing you mentioned is you had put in the groundwork. You had done a lot of work, you had put the effort in, so it wasn't like you were just picking up to jump into this hobby that you've never done before. And so when you've put in that groundwork, then people like your parents or anybody else can be like, okay, this isn't just something he's doing on a whim. He has his passion. This is his purpose. Let's support him wholeheartedly. So that's very, very cool to hear. And then even just one other thing that I'll mention really quickly, because I didn't even know this, but so John Legend worked at BCG right out of college. Simi Liu, the Marvel actor, worked at Deloitte right out of college, and he actually got fired. And you worked at Deloitte. And so it's just interesting how I think about all the talent that is trapped in corporate America in that hamster wheel that could be providing so much great content to the world, but people get stuck in that, I'm just going to kind of do this corporate thing forever and ever.
Fear's a hell of a drug, bro.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And again, if you're ever going to take a chance, like I'm actively doing it right now. I think your 20s are the best time to do it. I was just listening. No, I'm just rambling, but that's what a podcast is for.
Exactly.
But I was listening to Ken Griffin, who's one of my favorite speakers, the founder of Citadel. And he started Citadel at 22. It's the most successful hedge fund in the world, most profitable, blah, 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 multi-billionaire. And he was essentially hammering down on that point of like, in your 20s, take that chance. What do you have to lose? If we fall on our faces, we will be able to pivot back between our abilities and our network to something more stable. But like, this is the time to go F up. That's a special shout out to a friend group of mine, that little saying right there. So I love everything about that.
Nah, that's exactly how I felt, honestly. It's like, didn't have a wife, didn't have kids. There's no better time for me to do this and give myself that runway so that by the time I have both, I'm good.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So now talk to me about the first time you see your photography on a Times Square billboard. I believe this was, what was it, July 2020?
Yeah, sheesh, that was a very special moment because I feel like that was the first time my family really saw where my work was taking me and where my path had taken me. I was there with, my brothers and my mom. My father was out of the country at the time. But yeah, just seeing my work at that scale in a landmark that is Times Square, I can't even put it into words, that feeling. And it's more so having my family with me there to witness that, seeing the joy on their faces, genuine joy. I think that was, if everything ended that moment, I would have been fine. I think that's how momentous it was. But obviously, the marathon continues, so that was cool. It was great, and I'm definitely still a highlight, still a milestone for sure that I will always remember. But that was incredible. I've also never seen my work at that scale, so it's a powerful moment. Powerful. It's like, wow, okay, again, we're moving, we're progressing. So I think it just added more fuel to the fire and added more motivation to continue to just see how far I could take things and how far we could go with it.
And your work has now been featured in Times Square how many times?
You tell me.
I saw 3, but I might be wrong. I saw at least 3.
I mean, I think it's 4 now with
with
that cover. So yeah, it's nice to have a home here, I guess.
Casual. This guy. Is there a particular shoot that you've worked on, whether again brand or individual, that's been the most fulfilling, and why?
Most fulfilling, I think. Well, this is a tough one. Let me think about this for a little bit. Honestly, I think some of the most fulfilling work I've done has been the work that's been for me. I think so often I've always been and this is the nature of the space. You cater to a brand's goal, creative brief that you've been given, and it definitely is a blessing to be in that space where you're chosen for that. But I think, especially with this new project I've been working on called LBD, I think that's really been a reminder of where I started and a reminder of the hustle and the grit that it took me to get to this point, because I'm now having to tap back into that hustle and grit to continue to build this out to what I want to be my first book, my first monograph. And that I know is going to be a huge milestone for me. And each shoot provides it gives me more of that same passion and that drive that I felt early on, because it's very easy to get jaded. It's very easy to become inundated with and just feel like it's work, which in the past few years it started to feel like that. And I had to kind of really take a step back to remind myself why I was here. Remind myself that if this just turns into a job, I might as well go back to corporate where I'm getting a steady paycheck. You know? But in terms of a project or someone I worked with, I also think this new Davido album cover was very special. I'm very big on my culture, very big on our heritage and roots. So to be able to collaborate with an artist that, again, kind of gave me that first cosign, and to do so on such a momentous album for him and landmark in his career, I think again was like, wow, full circle, because then I was bridging the verticals of passion, purpose, and creativity. So it was lovely.
I think that's basically ikigai. Have you heard that term?
Exactly.
Essentially what that is. What'll get you paid, what you love, what your passion is. Exactly. And honestly, we'll honestly talk about that right now, but right before that, because I did see that LBD on a bunch of your posts. What does that actually stand for?
Stands for Little Black Dress.
Little Black
Black
Dress.
Dress.
Okay, what's the meaning behind that?
The whole goal behind this, or the whole inspiration behind this, it came at a point where I was actually just very creatively silent. Like, I just wasn't feeling inspired. I think there was a lot of it was just a period of my life where there was just a lot of mental weight. I was healing from a past relationship. I was just in a rough place, and I wasn't feeling inspired at all. And I got this idea of just I've always been inspired by women. A lot of my work has been fixated on women and women's fashion specifically. And I wanted to find something that would give me that inspiration, that drive to continue to create. And that's where that concept came from, which is basically building this body of women from different backgrounds, different heritage, different ethnicity, gender identification, sexual orientation, and creating this world of women with a ubiquitous fashion piece, which is the black dress. Every woman has, it's like their white Air Forces. How every guy kind of has a pair of Air Forces. I feel like every woman has a little black dress. It's like a staple fashion piece. And the goal is to take something that's so mundane and see how it can be translated over a multitude of different women in a multitude of different spaces that you can be as a woman. So that's been the goal, that's been the drive, and I've been building that to be my first book. And I've never talked about this publicly like this. So
I love that. I love that Go With The Flow is the first time you've been able to talk about that. And yeah, because I would not have got that from those 3 words. Yeah. Or those 3 letters, sorry.
Yeah. So, I've just kind of been keeping it low key, just putting the work out there, letting people wonder what it is. Now I've become a little bit more explicit as, I'm starting to get further along in that process.
Gotcha. That boom. I'll clip this. Don't worry. Okay, now to spend time on you working with Davido, and you put up 3 Instagram stories. I think it was a day that you kind of announced or revealed that you were the one who creative directed the album. Which I'll even say he's my favorite artist. Yeah. He's my goat. Anyone who knows me, he's literally my favorite. So again, just seeing that because I didn't know you super well, but even just seeing that you worked on that was just a very, very cool thing. It just, again, shows you what's possible when you chase your dreams. But the first post you said was, quick story, the year is 2018. Someone sent out a tweet looking for a photographer for his Made in America performance. You were fresh in the game, no real portfolio, just hunger, confidence, faith, and a camera, but why not me? Send the DM, tagged the person, and a bunch of posts, got the call, pulled up, and shot the show. Next story says, 7 years later, by nothing but God's timing, I photographed and creative directed the cover of David's latest album. No DM this time, just years of work, growth, and grace. And then the last one, which is, I love this. I liked it. See, I liked it. It says, I won't lie, the journey may have admittedly started with the pursuit of clout, but has long since diverged to be about calling. This is just proof that when you let God order the steps, the seeds you plant in faith will bloom with time, on time, in his time, which is just,
Amen.
You got so many gems in your stories, man. But even just talk to me about, again, that initial moment of, okay, you are hustling to do that first shoot, you get that opportunity. What then is that? Is there any sort of work you're doing with him in the 7 years in between? And then kind of speak about how that opportunity even came about.
It is literally a case of an open loop that found its way closed. 2018 came, like I said, did that Made in America performance. I did a couple of tour stops with him on various tours that he was on. But outside of that, I wouldn't say there was much that went on in those 7 years. You know, maybe a few years later in 2021, when the following year in 2019, when my cousin got married, you know, he performed at her wedding, and I took some photos of him there. You know, I might have seen him here and there, but I think I also took a step back from just concert and music photography, so I wasn't really doing much. But I was always tapped in, you know. I think, again, that's just another testament to the importance of relationships. You know, I think just developed a good relationship with him and his team to the point where 7 years later, obviously they also saw the growth in my own work along the way, which gave them the confidence, you know, to, you know, approach me with the opportunity. And I think, again, it was kind of very eerily similar to the original stint that we had together for Made in America. It was like, okay, wow, like this is a huge platform that I'm being given in different capacities, but still the weight felt equally. And yeah, it was just divine timing, honestly. Like, I've never done an album cover before, so the fact that he's the first album cover and was also the first artist I photographed, it's like, it doesn't, the stories write themselves.
You can't make that stuff up.
Exactly. So, like I said, it's really just God's timing. You know, everything is God's timing, and I'm grateful. It's been little about me, honestly.
When it comes to actually coming up with the idea, what does that level of collab? I'm just kind of curious now to like literally the artistic side of things, and no one is getting that insight on how much you're collaborating with him himself. What is kind of, is he giving you some sort of idea that's like, okay, work with this? Just honest, talk to me creatively about how you even come up with an album cover like that.
Yeah, so I was approached by Abiola and Tycoon. Abiola being a creative marketing strategist that David's team was working with for this whole project, and Tycoon being Coyote being his actual creative director on a day-to-day, album-to-album, concert-to-concert basis. So Abiola and Tycoon approached me with a general concept of what they wanted, and obviously over time the ideas changed. It was originally supposed to be shot in Nigeria, but based on this theme of national treasure was originally what it was, being obviously David being that national treasure. That was the focal point of the creative, and then I added my own twist to it, came up with the actual concept of what it should look like in terms of art direction, more like art direction. And again, it was supposed to be shot in Nigeria, so location changed, kind of the production of the actual stage that you're supposed to be on changed. But from the masquerades, which was, Abiola and Kayode's idea, just working with what they wanted to just chisel away at the block to make it the actual final product. And also obviously had a lot of help from my amazing agent, Kate, who helped find the location, who helped, really kind of just played point guard with a lot of the coordination. So honestly, it's a team effort, as it always is, especially of something of that scale and magnitude. But I think everyone's very happy with the final product.
Can confirm. Great album cover.
Great album too.
Great album too. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, so it's nothing short of an honor just to be a part of that, a small part of that. So,
where did the shoot end up taking place?
It took place in this spot called the Toronto Pinnacles, which is like 3.5 hours outside of LA. And my agent Kate, she's she's an outdoorsy person, so she had been there. I told her that I was looking for a certain aesthetic, and she pulled that up, and I was like, boom, this is it for sure.
And then you also were the creative director for Funds, the music video for that.
Yes.
Talk to me about that.
So this was done more remotely. Again, everything in the creative space is always very fluid. So it was originally supposed to be in Nigeria after the cover shoot. That was supposed to happen in Nigeria, but things pivoted. But we're still able to work with incredible director, creative director, Dami Twitch. So I already had the idea for the concept based on the song they had sent me. Again, focusing on that national treasure theme. And we're able to, just combine our heads and collab on that. And again, the final product was absolutely incredible.
Agreed. Great song, great video. Yeah, phenomenal. Okay, now taking a step back outside of this shoot specifically, more to some of the other work that you've done. Before I asked about what either campaign or individually work with those most fulfilling, now talk to me about the one that was just like the coolest, like, how am I working with this person?
I think I've had a couple of those, but I think, being in Lil Wayne's presence was a big one. I've Wheezy and another rapper who I won't name anymore were definitely my goats, and Wayne. Like, I really, when you talk about, like, I won't say I idolized him, but just in terms of influence and inspiration, yeah, he's top 5 for me. And to be able to just dap him up on set, crazy. It was like, wow, I think that was one of the few times I've been shell-shocked a little bit, where I was like, oh, shit, like...
That's the way. And you got a cool little picture out of it too. Hey, I'll include that in this little clip too. Because at a certain point, I feel like you need to. What's that balance of act like you've been there before, with also like, I need a pic with this.
Like, I don't try to do that too cool stuff. Like, I'm always gonna give you your flowers. If I'm a fan, I'm a fan. I'm gonna say that with my chest and stand behind it. And like, these are moments that you really look back on throughout your life. That in my life, these are things I'm gonna look back on. I don't want to look back and be like, damn, I wish I had said something. I wish I had done this, done that. Like, what? Come on, man. It's a photo. Like, yeah, I'm a fan. I came up on you. Yes. Thank you, Wayne. Can we take a photo? Yeah. So that's that. And I always want to maintain that level of youthfulness in everything, in every situation I'm in, because life will make you very serious. It can make you very serious. I know it's made me very serious. So I like to definitely try and, keep that kid energy alive whenever I can.
I love that. And I literally spoke about this on the last podcast I recorded, but I'm a huge advocate of give people their flowers while they can still smell them.
Yeah.
Literally just like, again, forget being too cool. They probably appreciate it too. Literally just not this Sunday, 2 Sundays ago, I was at Brooklyn Bridge Park playing basketball, and Joe Jonas was right there. I love the Jonas Brothers. They were literally the two first physical albums I ever bought were Jonas Brothers albums. I love the Jonas Brothers. So what was I gonna sit back and not go say what's up to Joe? Walked up to him, give a quick little intro. We spoke for like 30 seconds. And I told him that simple fact of you were literally the first two physical albums I ever bought were Jonas Brothers albums. And he was a very nice guy, like asked me what my name was. We spoke for a little bit and then kept it pushing, got my little picture. Like, why would I not say that to him when the work that he's done made an impact in my life?
Exactly.
J. Cole's my favorite rapper ever. I met him my intern summer. He was real low key, but again, I walked up to him and I didn't ask for a picture because like the setting didn't make sense. But I told him the simple fact, like, favorite rapper, love you, like been to all your shows, blah blah blah. Little fist bump, kept it pushing. On his way out, he gave me a little head nod. Like, you need tell people that you appreciate their work, and they will appreciate it.
You also don't know what that does for them, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm big on that.
Yeah. Okay, then two more quick questions before we get to the song segment. Is there anyone, either, again, I keep going, either individual or brand that's on the bucket list that you want to work with? Because I love manifestation, so let's put it out there.
Amen. Amen. All right, so I'll go big. I definitely want to photograph Beyonce. I just think she's an incredible woman. She's, I think, someone that would just look great behind my lens. Beyond that, also just really love Pharrell. That's another one of those like top 5 influences, you know, culture-wise. One of my other GOATs, you know, unfortunately, I don't have that same fire to photograph them anymore. But Pharrell's definitely still there. And I think a more unique one that is a little bit out there is Tyler, the Creator. Yeah, I just feel like he's a dope aura. And it's more so like I just want to chop it up with him, you know. Yeah, those are my 3 right now.
I love manifestation, and all of those are going to happen, and we're going to remember when you spoke about it right here.
Amen.
Speaking of Pharrell, were you at the MET Gala yesterday taking pictures?
I was.
Casual. Talk about that experience. You're so casual with that. I was.
I mean, again, that's another prayer answer, bro. It was unexpected. You know, I came to New York for something completely different. And, you know, it's again, kind of full circle back to where we started the convo of being weird, being a little anxious to put yourself out there. You know, I had put up a post like, hey, gonna be in New York. I'm open to any Met Gala opportunities that may come up. This is now Thursday. Met Gala is Monday. So I'm like, things are already locked in. Met Gala is not something you whip up within a few hours or days. So I'm just like, this sounds a little needy, a little meaty, but whatever. Fuck it. Excuse my language. And put it up there, and I was blown away with the feedback. I think it was also another moment of like just imposter syndrome and me not feeling like I was meant to be there, good enough to be there. But long story short, got a call and an opportunity from another bucket list talent that I've been wanting to work with for some time. And yeah, I got the opportunity to work with them yesterday. So crazy scenes, very chaotic, very reminiscent of Lagos in December. But yeah, that was another prayer answered, so very grateful.
And then last question before we get to the song segment, who are some of your own artistic inspirations?
Ooh. Artistic inspirations, I think, well, within the space right now, there are a lot of amazing photographers I love. Gabriel Moses is just popping his shit right now over in London. Musically, I'm very inspired by The Weeknd. I'm also just very inspired by people and conversations. I think that's where most of my inspiration comes from. It's just from everyday casual conversations, everyday casual interactions. I won't say I'm really much of a huge museum guy. So, yeah, I don't even know if I really answered that question right, but those are who pop in mind right now. my brothers inspire me heavily, like heavily, and they only continue to increase that inspiration. But yeah, I'm inspired by life. I'm inspired by God, honestly. That's one of the biggest inspirations. But yeah, I just try and find meaning and passion in every situation I put myself in. And if I can't find that, then I'm not there. You know.
I love it. Very, very well said. Last thing, I always have my guests come with 3 to 5 songs that describe who they are as a person. Can you say the song and then the reason you chose it?
Man, you gonna chop this up?
Yeah. If you want to like pull out the phone, you can. Yeah.
I think one of the first ones that really popped in mind was "Cry No More" by Stormzy. You said why?
Yeah. Why? Yeah.
Just that verse, Stormzy's verse on that song is just very. I've even had a homie that reached out to me like, "Yo, this reminds me about you." It's just like the grit and the you can just feel kind of like as he's telling this story about how he got to where he was. And the whole song is really just like nobody want to cry no more. Like no one wants to hustle, no one wants to struggle to get to where they're trying to go. And Stormzy's verse just really epitomizes kind of like the mindsets I've had, some of the feelings I felt in my journey and still feel on the journey. So that's one. I think on a little more playful side, I think is Salima, which is this. You familiar?
Yeah.
You know, it's my piano song. I love dance, love just to be upbeat, just the mood, just the energy. Stereo Love, which is another dance song from like first time I heard it was like high school. Yeah, check it out.
Yeah, that one I don't know.
If you're into that. But it's another just peaceful, calm, but also upbeat song. What's that? That's 2?
That was 3.
That's 3?
Yeah.
2 more. Damn. Songs that describe me. Sheesh.
If you only got 3, we could go with 3.
All right, yeah, let's see. I don't like leaving questions unanswered. Digital Dash.
Oof, fire.
Digital Dash. I feel like that song just has so much swag, so much aura. It's one of my favorite songs, so that's definitely a song that would describe me. And last one would be Oceans by Hillsong.
No, I don't know. I've got to tap in.
That's it's more of a worship gospel song, but I feel like I had to throw that in there because, you know, I'm big on my faith, and that's one of my go-tos just when I'm trying to lock in, when I'm trying to just tap back into that space, just feel his presence. So I think that's a well-rounded list.
Very good list, man. I mean, again, at the start of this, you said you didn't have a lot of wisdom to share. I think you've dropped a lot of gems in this episode. I think this has been a very good conversation. I just want to give you your flowers for a second here. I think you are an inspiration to a lot of us who are doing things creatively and kind of chasing that dream, to people who are leaving corporate America and, again, just want to actually find what their true passion is. It's been very inspiring to see how far you've come in 5 years or however many years, and looking forward to seeing how much further you keep going, because the journey's by no means complete. You're just getting going.
Amen. Thank you, brother. Thank you for having me on your platform. You know, it's always a little weird for me to be here. Like I said, I just feel like I haven't done enough at times to really be in these spaces.
You've done plenty.
Thank you, brother. Thank you for giving me space, you know, just to be able to talk, just be able to just, you know, commune and fellowship, you know. And I wish you so much more success on this. I know it's not easy, especially in a day and age, like I said, where you feel like everyone's doing everything. But just keep going, bro.
Amen. Appreciate it.
You definitely have something special here and there as well.
Ref's Cap coming so soon.
Exactly.
Coming so soon.
Thank you, brother.
Any final words for the people?
God bless. That's it. You feel me? That's all I got.
Enough said. This has been another episode of Go With The Flow. Thank you for listening.